Thank you for coming. I want to introduce Travis Ayers from Luxel and Susie Pingree and
Huck Pingree.
Huck from the San Juan Island Distillery. We thought it would be nice to hear from them because they both reorganized their company's production to produce products for the public health efforts in the county. And we know many other people have also done this, and we'd love to hear their stories as well. But we thought this would be a nice sort of inspiring and uplifting way to go with this chat and chew that might help keep people more motivated and coming up with other ways that they can help. So with that, why don't we start with Susie, and you can tell us about what you guys did, and then we can move to Huck, and then we can move to Travis.
We wanted to make hand sanitizer, but it was really hard to figure it out and get the materials until we talked to Chuck West at Orcas Island Distillery. And he gave us some really good ideas. And then Rick Hughes helped us get our first batch together with the right ingredients.
And the distillers, Washington Distillers Guild was also a really great source helpful. Of information.
Yeah.
Because initially there were very conflicting things coming out of the Tobacco Tax and Trade Board that controls distilling industries, and FDA and CDC. And that wasn't very helpful, but the Distillers Guild helped us solve those problems.
That was huge. They also helped us get the right ingredients for the mix. Now we bought 100 gallons of grain neutral spirit because our distillery, we have a little still, it's a pot still. We can only go up to about 84% alcohol.
Oh, when we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
Yeah, more like 76.
So we can't make the hand sanitizer according to the formula with our alcohol. We have to buy it, but luckily we buy it all the time to make our grain-based spirits. So we had about 6 gallons in stock, and then we ordered another 100 gallons, and we placed another order for 100 gallons because people are really coming and getting it. And we decided to give it away because it just felt like the right thing to do.
And most distillers in the state are doing that.
Yeah, yeah. There are some that aren't, like there's one in Bellingham. There are a couple in Bellingham. We got a email from the YMCA Women's Shelter in Bellingham, and they need a lot of hand sanitizer. So we're giving them 5 gallons. They're going to come and pick it up tomorrow. But you know, why wouldn't the distilleries in Bellingham give them that? It's ridiculous.
They're charging $360 for 5 gallons, which is quite a markup on the ingredients.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing we've done is we actually, looks like since sales are going to be quite slow, that we have some excess of our own cider. And while we can't get that up above the 80% threshold, it can still be part of the mix.
Yeah.
So we're making a hand sanitizer has to be 80% alcohol, needs to contain a small amount of hydrogen peroxide, a small amount of glycerol, and it needs to be denatured. And all denatured means is made unfit to drink. And it turns out Peace Island helped us on our first batch. They gave us a bottle of isopropyl alcohol.
Well, we also got a gallon of isopropyl alcohol from Peace Health Hospital.
That's what I said.
Oh, you just said that.
Yeah. But the easier way we've now pursued, we bought a substance called Bitrex. Spent $100 on it. And that stuff is so bitter that 1/16 of an ounce is sufficient to make 100 gallons undrinkable. So we're using it a drop at a time. And so that, you know, we're not having to dilute the alcohol much. And so we can use both our own alcohol and the grain alcohol we've bought.
So one really wonderful side effect of us giving the sanitizer away free is that people are coming to the distillery and they're buying our spirits too.
Yeah, we hadn't thought of that.
So now we're actually about equal to where we were a year ago in our sales, which is like, we got to bring our employee back 1 day a week, which is wonderful. We feel really good about that.
So that's a quick overview.
That's a wonderful story. It's wonderful in all dimensions, helping the community and helping yourself as well.
Yeah, we had no idea that would happen.
Well, we didn't have any bottles and we didn't have any way to distribute them, but we thought if we just got the word out that people could bring their own container, and we just set up for 3 hours Saturday, 3 hours Sunday, and they showed up. Last weekend, between the 2 days, we had almost 80 people.
Yeah.
Anybody?
What's that? We can open up for questions now, or we could, or Travis, you could tell us about what you guys were doing at Luxell, if you like,
Yeah.
and then we can open up.
I'd be happy to. I was curious if you guys had difficulty in sourcing the materials. You went through a list of different things that you obtained, but was that hard?
Well, isopropyl alcohol turned out to be impossible to order. It's nationwide, just not available anywhere. And that's the easy formula everybody knew about. This other one initially had both this Bitrex stuff and another ingredient with a long chemical name. But halfway through this, just about the time we needed to get going, the FDA temporarily waived the additional ingredient for denaturing, and just the bitterness alone is sufficient. And at that point, purchasing those ingredients was pretty easy. Oh, and the other nice thing was the glycerol. We haven't actually bought glycerol because we were calling around on the Distillers Guild, had a list of people who had extra of supplies, and we found somebody, and he just sent us 4 gallons of glycerol.
Just incredible. Yeah.
He said, "Can you pay for the shipping?" We said, "Sure."
Yeah.
we sent him back a couple bottles of our spirits as a thank you, but he was just goodness of his heart. There's tremendous amounts of that in the distilling community.
Yeah, really proud to be a part of that group.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing that, and it'd be great to hear more in the questions and comments afterwards, or in the discussion afterwards. So Travis, can you tell us about what you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm Travis Ayers. I own Luxell Corporation, and for those of you that don't know, we make, our primary product is a very specialized line of optical filters that are used in applications like for weather satellites and solar satellites, as well as semiconductor manufacturing equipment, laser targets for the national labs. We've got some biomedical applications as well. And we have about 20 employees roughly, and we've been impacted, of course, by all of this pandemic. We are deemed an essential business because of a good part of our customer base is critical infrastructure. However, a fair bit of our customers have also closed down, and so we've seen reduced demand, no doubt about that. But we did what I think is, as opposed to Susie and Hawk, I feel like our efforts were much more on the side, as opposed to completely taking your entire business and turning it towards that great use. We have a single 3D filament printer, and use that in our to make different manufacturing fixtures and things to ship product in and things like that. And so we first became aware of this 3D design that was to shield the N95 masks and to try to increase their lifetime by basically acting as a splash guard. And we made a few of those and delivered those to Eventide Health, and Dr. House was great, giving us feedback really quickly. And we turned out just enough for his staff And then shortly after that, we became aware of the NIH had started a repository of 3D printing designs that they had clinically evaluated. And so I thought that was a good source to go to rather than, just whatever design you might run across on the internet.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up making are these 3D 3D printed face shields. And so our part is this black plastic, and it's just secured with a non-latex rubber band. And the designer came up, I thought it was pretty ingenious. They designed these pins so that you can just buy this acetate off of Amazon. It's old school overhead transparency for those of us who remember that. And it just takes a standard 3-hole punch, is spaced accordingly, and you just put it right across there. This one's, they suggested reinforcing it with a little bit of tape to make it easier to take off and on and to clean. And so I got in touch with the high school, Sam Garson, who's heading up the STEM program over there. I got in touch with him through Fred Woods, the principal. Adam Summers at the UW Labs was also printing some, but he sort of has, I'm not sure which design he's using now, but he's still printing and shipping to different places. We have been combining our production with the high school's production. They have 2 printers that are big enough to make these, and then several other smaller ones you might have seen online that Sam's been printing the mask extenders to make masks a little bit more comfortable to wear long term. So he's been using his other printers for that, and 2 of his printers to make the shields that or the headbands that I showed you. And ours can produce, it takes about 9 hours to produce 4 of them. And so one effect of this situation on us is that we're limiting the number of people that we have in the office or in our lab. And we're also spreading out shifts and doing remote work. And so usually we're just a 1-shift operation, but now we have people here, about 18 hours of the day. And so we're able to run that 3D printer through 2 cycles a day. So we're making about 8 a day. The high school's making anywhere between 4 and 5 a day. We've provided about 125 of these so far. And we started out with Dr. House's practice. And then we reached out to the hospital, but they said they were okay. And then we stocked the San Juan County Emergency Department of Emergency Management. And then when they thought that they had enough, I registered it on the Washington State website for our capabilities. But interestingly, I never got contacted about that. But I found a website, Get Us PPE. And looked over at across the way into Bellingham, for somebody close, and the Whatcom Unified Command said they could use the shields, and so that's been has been most of our ongoing supply. They think they're going to need a few hundred that are going to go to St. Joe's Hospital. So as I said, it's not a complete change for us. And as Susie said, we've been giving these away for free too. So thought that was the right thing to do. But yeah, that's the short story of what we're doing. I'd be happy to show it closer or answer any questions.
I think that's really, really cool.
Thank you.
That's really wonderful to hear about. Excuse me.
So Mickey, this is Chris. These are wonderful stories, and especially with sort of the island angle backdrop. Can we promote this? Contact some of the news networks and just say, here's some wonderful, heartwarming stories. Here's a link to the story you can review, and try to get the word out.
Sure.
I think that's a great idea. And one of the things I was hoping with this is that we've heard about a couple of these, like we heard about the Dactylaron orcus, and Dr. House's article that we found out about what Luxell was doing mentioned some of the local glass blowers as well. But we thought there's probably a lot of other stories that we haven't heard about that would be nice to be able to highlight. And I know I've heard about people doing things like making the cloth masks, for example, and so we thought it would be nice to sort of share these stories and get other people involved and thinking about it and thinking about what they could do, and maybe highlight some of the people around the community who are doing all these great things. One thing I was wondering about, since you guys are offering these for free, but there's clearly a fair bit of materials involved in producing them. Have you been taking donations to help support those efforts?
No, our sales are more than offsetting that problem, and
We're keeping track of it. We'll call them donations at the end of the year.
We're probably going to make a third to a half as much as we usually do this year,
if we're lucky.
If we're lucky, but it's still enough to cover that and to keep our employee 1 day a week, and I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's changed things a lot for the two of us. I think we would have perhaps gotten a little cabin fever if we just shut down for the last month, and this is given us an excuse to drive over to the distillery every day.
It's great to that the distillery is also an essential business. Beverage producers are essential businesses, so we are entitled to go over there all the time, and we do. It's a good place to work.
Yeah, and for me, the material costs are really pretty small for the plastic resins that we're using, and the machine is really sort of like once we dial in the recipe and the settings. There's some tweaking along the way, but essentially it's you upload the 3D model, get it through the slicing software, and let it run on its own in the back of the lab. And there's a little bit of labor in making the face shields and doing the assembly and bagging them and things. But we've had San Juan Airlines, for example, they took a box over to Bellingham for us for free. In their plane, and Island Air Ambulance, they flew a batch over to Orcas for us, for example. And then now the folks over in Bellingham, they've actually sourced a different type of face shield material, the clear plastic. And so they're just asking us now to provide just the band itself, and they're going to be doing the assembly and providing the material. So it's pretty minimal for us.
Well, I'm really glad you said that. The women's shelter, we discovered we really can't ship it.
It's a fire hazard.
So the women from the women's shelter in Bellingham are going to come and get it tomorrow, but that's going to cost them $50 to get on the ferry and
5 hours.
And 5 hours. Maybe San Juan Airlines would do that for us too.
Yeah. I've also had one of the representatives from Whatcom Command. I could ask him because he's a pilot and he's been coming over, and I've just been leaving the shields sort of by the pilot's lounge. It feels like a spy dead drop or something. And so if you maybe we could exchange information here after as we're wrapping up, and if he's coming over, that might be another transportation.
Nice. That would be great. They would be so relieved.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can also use the chat at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, and you can send messages to either everyone or to individual people in the conversation.
Thanks.
If you wanted to share that.
Excellent.
Do you know of other products that are in demand that people could be making either with similar methods or with other sort of local production capacity that's here in the community?
For 3D printing, I saw a few things on Facebook of people discussing, but I never found like any sort of like central point. It strikes me that there's probably a fair amount of 3D printers on the island, but I haven't seen much organization around that myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Adam Summers had asked a question about that on the Knowledge Worker Slack group, but there were only the ones that I knew about at the time. I didn't even know that you guys had one at that point.
Yeah.
I know that there's Nikita Palmasani, I think it is, on Lopez. They had a group that was trying to make the filament and do 3D printing from recycled material, recycled plastics. And so I think they have the 3D printers there, though I don't know if they would be a variety that would work for the purposes you had. And of course our library has one, but again, I don't know if it would have the mechanical strength that you might need.
Yeah.
What about you, Susie? And
No, I don't know of any others. No.
No.
yeah. It's great to hear that it's benefited your it's brought new customers to you too.
Yeah, we're over the moon about it.
Well, by the way, people can unmute themselves if they have any questions too. I'm not sure if I mentioned that early on. But if there aren't any other questions, then we can call it for time. And thank you all for joining us. And it's really inspiring to hear your stories and hear about what you guys have been doing. And we really appreciate it in the community. I know the EDC got some of your hand sanitizer. And
Nice. Our pleasure. Thanks for organizing this, Mickey. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
everything you're doing with the
thank
EDC.
you.